had to reboot my computer. I am going to try to bring on Mary. Hold on. Mary, okay. Mary, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. My computer totally froze, and I had to reboot it. I am so sorry. The weird thing, this has never happened before, and you and I, before the show started, we were talking about how I do everything. I'm a one-woman show, but the things that have been happening lately, this has never happened before. All I did, I knew you were there. I just had to bring you on, and I clicked the mic icon to bring you on, and the computer just, you know how the computer just spins and spins and spins. No matter what I tried to do, it just kept spinning and spinning and spinning. So then I had to reboot my computer and say, let me see if I can reboot it and bring you back. But you're here. I'm here.
Here we are. Well, well done.
We're here. And there's actually a caller on, but maybe they're just listening. They don't have a question mark by their name. But I haven't really gotten a chance to let you introduce yourself to the audience, and that comes first. So, Mary, as I had said before, we were so rudely interrupted by the computer. I say you are the author of an award-winning book. Please tell us your journey, your story. Please share that with the listeners. If we have any live listeners, it's okay. It's a podcast, so it's all good.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, let me just say thank you so much for letting me be on your show, and I'm really happy to be part of this, and I thank you for all of the work that you do and the connections that you make possible for all of us. As we were saying earlier, your show serves a very important purpose. So I'm very happy to be part of this. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm so happy. I'm so happy you reached out to me, and I'm so honored to have you. I really am. It's a blessing. I feel honored by just, Spirit inspired me to do this show, and I just am being obedient to following Spirit's guidance.
That's right on.
Yeah.
Right on.
So tell us your journey, and tell us in as much detail as you'd like to share with us.
Sure. Well, the book that you mentioned is called Unwitting Mystic, and it is essentially the story of how I went from being an executive in Washington, D.C., to living mostly a monastic life in a Buddhist nunnery at the foothills of the Himalayan mountains in India. And that particular journey to India started about, ultimately it all started about 15 and a half years ago when I began hearing a voice. And this voice told me that I was supposed to be doing something very important. And at the time, I was traipsing around the country directing clinical research programs in respiratory medicine. And so I thought I was already doing something very important, and I tried to ignore that voice. But it just kept getting more persistent and more pronounced, and eventually, after 6 months of that, I knew that I was going to have to figure out what was happening here. And so I flew to Little Rock, Arkansas to see a friend of mine who's a psychotherapist, and she specializes in near-death experience. She, at the time, was teaching medical students about spiritual phenomenology in their patients and in the incidence of illness and death and surgery and such. And so I knew that she would probably be able to help me sort of dive into something a little unusual. And so we underwent, she did a hypnosis session with me that weekend, and it turned out to be this really profound, more than 7 hours of me being in divine realms with encounters with Jesus at his moment of crucifixion, and me meeting my soul group, and having a very big weighty meeting about the conflict nature of our world, and all of these things that I had absolutely no idea about because I have no religious background whatsoever. I've never read the Bible. I've never studied any kind of religious text. I've never been a seeker. I've never had a lot of questions. So it was a weekend that really just turned my world completely upside down. And because I was living in Washington, D.C. at that time, what I was learning through that event and the subsequent events that happened, because after that weekend I began to have these metaphysical events, excuse me, spontaneously. And so all of these things that I was learning from divine beings and what we might consider God or angels or Jesus, Buddha eventually, etc., they were all very rich in love and understanding and wisdom instantly in these moments. And then I would come out of them into this crazy world in Washington, D.C. and other places, and my worlds were just not matching. And so it was getting to be way too much for me to hold. And I didn't know how to talk about what was happening. I didn't know what to do with what was happening. So I began to seek help everywhere I went around the world and around the country here in the U.S. I saw psychotherapists and shamans and regular doctors and acupuncturists and Reiki practitioners, and you name it. I tried to get help. And no one could help me figure out what was happening. And I just kept getting all these failures, one right after the other, while I was also still trying to continue to do my very big life in Washington and eventually in Africa as well. And so eventually, starting around 2009, all of the sort of successes and normalcies of my life just began to fall apart one by one by one. My job, my home, my finances, my relationships, my family and friends relationships, and just in the course of a couple of years, suddenly I found myself without any sense of normalcy whatsoever. And I had been, to that point, extremely successful and I could open doors very easily. And at this point, I couldn't open any doors at all, no matter how hard I tried. And at the same time, all of this spiritual stuff was really pushing much harder and higher. And so I couldn't figure out what to do with the spiritual stuff, and I couldn't figure out what to do with my normal life. And so I just made a decision in my state of massive despair that what must be happening was that this was all a sign that it was time for me to leave this earthly world and do my work from the divine realms. Now, that was nothing at all that I had been shown. It was just simply the decision that I made in my massive state of despair. So on March 23rd, 2011, I took a very carefully timed out and arranged combination of 97 prescription pain and sleeping pills with 3 glasses of wine. And then I lay down and I said my prayers, and I just thought that was it. And then 2 days later, I just woke up. I woke up all by myself. I woke up very sick and without any ability to move, to operate my motor skills. But miraculously, I was alive. And so it was that miracle, surviving that suicide attempt, that really put me in a supreme state of surrender, because I realized when I woke up that there was just nothing more I could do. I had tried everything, and there was clearly something greater than me that was in charge of what was happening. And so I just stopped. I stopped trying to figure things out. I stopped trying to plan. I stopped trying to fix. And I literally just sat on the end of my couch, numb, and I cried when I needed to cry, and I just, sort of said my prayers to God, like, whatever you need me to do, you're going to have to show me, because I can't figure it out. And then slowly, just, literally within days, on its own, all of these doors just started opening so easily. And one of the first doors led me to a psychotherapist who was absolutely perfect in working with me. And then she happened to have trained with a psychologist whose specialty was the field of consciousness. And so then I started working with both of them. And then it was he, actually, the psychotherapist whose specialty was consciousness, who helped me understand what was happening to me, that I'm not crazy like I thought I was. I just simply have a really profound gift of insight. And as he put it, most people will study and meditate and train to try to go from A to B to C to get to the Z of spiritual wisdom. But I just happened to jump from A to Z. And the problem is that Z has no context for me because I don't have any religious background. So for me, it was the first moment of understanding what was happening in my life. And given that knowledge, he and the psychotherapist that I was working with began to try to find community for me, because they knew that I needed to get into a place where I could just focus on my metaphysical abilities and then see what kind of things came up naturally for me, leading me in the right direction. And we tried a lot of different doors, and the ones that opened easily were leading me to the Buddhist nunnery in India. And so the suicide attempt was in March, and by October I was on a plane going to live at Tosamling Nunnery in India.
Mhm. Okay, wow. And, amazing, too. And I didn't realize that was 2011, because that was a very challenging year for me. It was December of 2011. I don't know if you are aware of it, but I don't know what tickles me is you know the exact number of pills you took. I don't. But I tried to take my life in December of 2011 when doctors had told me my son wasn't going to make it. They were asking me, he had been on life support. At that time, he had been on life support for about 5 weeks. And they were asking me to take him off of life support, and they did not think he was going to live. I did not give them permission to take him off life support. I decided I was not going to live through that experience. I was already spiritual at the time. I already knew that we were all one. I had already awakened to the truth of oneness. I knew that we are divine light, we're divine spirit. I know that this reality is not all there is. So kind of like what you said, you were ready to leave this experience. I said I was ready to leave this experience because I did not want that experience of losing my son. And I took a bottle of over-the-counter sleeping pills and some Tylenol. So I don't know how many pills. And I was out for 2 days, but I was in a hospital. So I was in a hospital waiting room. And the first time I woke up, I remember being like in the ER, and then I was out again. And then I remember being, the second time I woke up, just opened my eyes, I was, I think, like in an ICU unit. And so, but I was out for 2 days, and I don't have any recollection of where my spirit went. Because I know that we have a lot of people can come back with near-death experiences. I wish I had one, but I one that I can remember. And but I did wake up, and my first thoughts when I woke up is I couldn't believe I was still here. I was like, wait a second, I'm not. I shouldn't be here. But the miracle is my son pulled himself off of life support. I mean, he took himself off of life support, and he was fine. The doctors were stunned. One doctor said to me it was like he was not even sick. It was a true miracle. So we went home that December. I always say the hospital was on 34th Street in Philadelphia, and it was Christmas time. And I say I truly experienced a true miracle on 34th Street at Christmas. That Christmas, yes. So we both went home the day before New Year's, and I'll never forget, just being, I was just so thankful that I was bringing my son home. I knew I had experienced a true miracle, and I was so thankful. I promised God and myself and my higher self I would never, try to take my life again, and I would never forget that blessing, that miracle. I would never stop being thankful for just being able to bring my son home that New Year's of 2011. And he did pass, and he did make his transition in 2014. But when he did, I was at peace. I understood, and I do believe there is no death. There is only eternal life. And his higher self, his soul self, made the decision. And I believe that he and I had made the decision to go through what we went through before my birth. So one of the books that helped me get through, I was reading, was Your Soul's Gift and Your Soul's Plan. But when I read that, when I found out that you went through, you and I had that same experience of trying to take our lives and not being successful. We're here for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
So,
that's right.
So
it's
true.
interesting. I had an interview back in March with Buddha at the Gas Pump, and the host of that show, Rick Archer, originally very early in the interview, he wanted to talk a lot about the suicide attempt, and he approached it with kind of a little bit of anger about people who attempt to take their life, but it's kind of a selfish thing. And he was very clear on his feelings, which I appreciated. And after that show, the show was nearly 2 hours, and after that show, I got so many emails from psychologists and academics and parents of people whose children had committed suicide, or people who they themselves had tried and failed, etc., and people who just really suffer from severe depression within the spiritual community. And it was such an interesting reaction to Rick's very openly stating his frustration in not having a lot of compassion with the issue of people that attempt suicide. And it was really such a fascinating discussion that we had because, it was very clear that there are many, many, many people in the spiritual community that really start to struggle as they begin to wake up. And now their world is a little untethered and things aren't making sense and they can't find a way to relate or feel normal. And so it's not unusual that there's a lot of discussion or angst about suicide in the spiritual community. And boy, was it a hot-button issue when I got off the show. And then I literally had more than 100 emails from people that really, and overwhelmingly people saying, I thank you for standing up to Rick's comments. But at the same time, I totally understand why Rick feels the way that he does, that it is a sense of loss for the people that are left behind. And he had three friends who committed suicide, and his mother attempted suicide. And so he had just a lot of, I think, resentment for people abandoning course, if you will. And his take on it was, just get some help. And then, it's probably just a minor thing, not a minor thing, but a temporary thing that you can get through. But as I was explaining to him, I sought help again and again and again and again and again, and no one could help me. And so sometimes, it is obviously a last-ditch effort to end the suffering. And obviously it's not one that we all wish for, but, it's a legitimate issue that we need to talk about probably more in the spiritual community and not just have a one-sided blanket statement of it shouldn't happen or it's okay if it does. It's such an interesting issue to me, I think.
Extremely. I did listen to the interview with you and Rick. I've communicated with Rick via email. My first 3 shows was about suicide. The title of my first 3 shows was Suicide from a Spiritual Perspective. I had the author of Your Soul's Plan and Your Soul's Gift as my first guest, because those are the 2 books I was reading the month my son was on life support in 2014 when he did make his transition. I did listen to Rick's take on it, and I understand how people feel that way. For me, honestly, especially since 2011, since going through that miracle, and then eventually 3 years later losing my only son, I can tell you from my perspective, it's all spirit. I live my life from a completely spiritual perspective, meaning if someone decides to take their own life, it's their soul. Like you and I tried, and we're still here. Okay, and other people have tried, and they're still here.
My soul is having none of it.
Yeah, exactly. It is your soul. It's your higher self has the final say. It doesn't matter what you do. If your higher self says no, you have more work to do here. You're staying here. You're going to stay here. So those people who succeeded suicide, it's their higher self's decision for them to go. My son left his body at 29 years old. That's a very young age. It was his higher self decision, and his higher self planned that, I know, before he was even born. A lot of times, souls plan to be here 2 years, 3 years, a few months. They have their reasoning. Our higher self, our soul self that knows all the lifetimes we've lived and knows why we're coming back into this incarnation. It's up to the higher self, and we cannot judge why that soul decided to make that decision. So I look at every life as spiritual first, because the incarnation is very fleeting and very temporary, and they're going to have hundreds of incarnations. So I think it's often, that's why my first show was with Robert, and it was about suicide from a spiritual perspective. I love what Robert said during that show. He says, in society, our society, we frown upon people who take a gun to their head and shoot themselves and get it over with quickly. But what about people who smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day, are doing things they know are not healthy for themselves, but they're killing themselves slowly? He said that's just every death is a suicide. And every death is a suicide from the perspective that the soul decides it's time for you to go home, or it's time for you to, it's time for you to leave this existence. And it's at a soul level decision. So every death is a suicide.
Yeah. I'll tell you how I know that our soul is, our higher self is in charge. Because if it was me that was in charge and not my higher self, I would have been an opera singer or a backup dancer for Michael Jackson. So this is how I know that it was not me who was in charge. I now walk around talking about religion and spirituality, and I just thought that was the most uncool thing ever when I was growing up. So I know that it's not me that's in charge.
Right. And I always, for me, I just put it in I don't know what my higher self has planned for me. I just kind of go with the guidance, just one step at a time. And
and that's essentially after I moved to India, that was the entire course of my life, because I had to sit in a state of full surrender, and which is actually also a very common topic in a lot of the talks. People have a lot of questions to get into a state of surrender, but so things come to me in my metaphysical experiences. They come to me in a very profound way. It is almost always related to the origins of divine truth. So, for example, in the first experience of Jesus on the cross, it was in that moment I was given sight into what was happening in our world for untold millennia before that moment, and then what was happening in the world everywhere around that moment, and then what happened since to current day. So it was me understanding the world before Christianity, with the birth of Christianity, and then the evolution of Christianity from the perspective of Christ. And in all of my events, I would say 90% of my events, it is that same kind of going to the origin point through the embodiment of the origin experience. So like into the mind of Buddha at his first moment of enlightenment. So it is the foundation of Buddhism from the vantage point of Buddha. And the origins of the universe, the origins of fear, the origins of thought, etc. But the reason why I'm able to get all of that very fundamental core origin information is because I have no filter. Because I don't have any religious background. And so I have no expectations about what kind of information should come to me, what form it needs to come in, who it should come from, how it's all connected, none of that. And so I must remain a clean and clear vessel to and through which information should come. And to do that, I have to stay in this full state of surrender and just trust the process enormously. Because every time I try to sort of step in a little bit out of my old habits and conditioning and try to take a little charge, nothing works. It's so evident to me. And so I've had to really, really practice the art of surrender, and ultimately it really pays off.
Right. Very interesting, very interesting. I had a religious upbringing, but not strict. I was sent to Catholic school just for a better education. Never became a Catholic. My mom became Episcopalian, and I was baptized Episcopalian. But I say that because even though I was brought up with some religious upbringing, it never rang true to me. It never resonated with me, what I was being taught, as a young child. But my father said I was brought up in a very strict home where my father said that children are to be seen and not heard. So my parents weren't religiously strict. They only sent us to Catholic school for a better education. But my father was strict on us not speaking. He would say that at the dinner table, children are to be seen and not heard. So and I'm in church and I'm thinking, this doesn't make any sense. I'm like, what you're telling me does not fly at all with me, and I can't even question you on it. But it's interesting that I've always, even as a small child, sought out truth, and from a very young age started reading and studying metaphysical books. But it was quantum physics. It was a quantum physics film that really awoke in me to the truth of oneness, that we're all connected, we're all one. And that was my awakening, true awakening. It wasn't a mystical experience, but it was something inner, something inside of me woke up. My soul woke up and we're really all connected. We're really all one. And that made a big difference for me. And I did try to share it with others at the time. That was in 2007. And I could tell, it would frustrate me that nobody was understanding what I was talking about. It's like, okay, well, then as I grew, I was like, it's okay. They are where they are, and no judgment, because that's a big part of, I believe, for me, for my spiritual growth, is not to judge others, regardless of what their belief, what their religion, if whatever they're attached to is, if they're attached to this physical world, whatever their attachments are, it's not my place to judge that, because truly that other is just another aspect of myself. So that I look at everyone as just a mirror, just a reflection. This outer world is just a reflection. So I keep that at the fore. Like I said, for me, everything I keep at the forefront of my head as to what I believe, what resonates to me as true. And what resonates to me as true is this outer world is an illusion of my own creation. So surrender, that's what I knew there was, you were speaking about surrender. And surrender for me is loving and embracing this now moment, because all there is a now. And what's happening in this now moment is exactly what's supposed to happen in this now moment. And to push against it, to fight against it, to say I don't want it to be the way it is, to me is not surrender. Surrendering for me is surrendering to what is. But the word surrender, I prefer, for me, I like to use the word embrace. Embrace and love what is. That's what surrender means for me.
I'm getting ready to, I start my summer tour next Tuesday. On this tour specifically, I'm going to talk about what love actually is. And so it has to do with what you're saying about surrender and embrace. We talk a lot about love. I mean, you can turn anywhere and everybody talks about love, 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 but nobody actually talks about what love actually is. And so this is going to be the entire focus of my tour this year, and I'm going to be using an actual metaphysical event to talk about this. But the basis of love from which we originate, and I'm not talking about love like I love ice cream or preference or lust or that sort of adoration or that sort of thing. I'm talking about the life force that we are, that which gives us our life and all life. And from a metaphysical viewpoint, I have embodied the various stages and states of love. So, for example, the origin, the state of pure love before it actually exists. So it is love in its potential to exist, and or love in the state of pure nothingness, if you will. And then love in its state of manifestation or existence, and then love in its state of separation from knowing itself, which is the world that we live in. And we know that because none of us wake up in a blissful state of embodied knowing ourselves as divine love. And so, but the state from which we originate, that which gives us life, the qualities of that state. Now, many people who are very, very well read and know all of the sacred texts may use different words, but the qualities that I know, having been in this state many times, the qualities of that state are first and foremost unconditionality. There are no conditions in this state. And it is the state of pure equality. Everything that is in this state of pure potential is equal in its potential to manifest. And everything in this state is free. It is the ultimate of freedom, and at the same time it is the ultimate of unity because it is at one with everything. And it is the ultimate and original state of acceptance. So pure love, that from which we originate, is unconditional, equal, free, unified acceptance. And so until we really commit to being that field and offering that state to the world, we're not really offering love. We're offering good intentions and kindness and compassion, but that's not the same thing as an ultimate state of pure love. And this is where we're heading to now, that people are realizing. This is why we see equality becoming so much more of an issue in our world, discussions of unconditionality, discussions of unity, and creating a sense of freedom for people. And the ultimate state of acceptance is right in the present moment. And so until we realize that we're heading for this full state of pure love, we're just kind of inching towards there. We're not there yet. But I think this is a very important thing for people to be discussing, not just saying love and the use of it in general, but actually looking at what they're doing to offer as love.
So true. So true. What you said is exactly what love is. It's unconditional. It is so. That's, you know what, when I was saying as a child, things didn't ring true to me because they were telling me God is unconditional love, but if you don't do this, you're going to burn forever. I'm like,
right. So
I don't understand that. I don't understand that unconditional love, you know. So no, exactly. You're what you said is so right on. Unconditional love is exactly that. Just pure unconditional. It has no conditions. So as a small child, you know, you're taught that God is unconditional love, but if you're bad, you're gonna burn forever.
And I talk about in my book about when I was a child, I could hear Jesus in my heart. I knew Jesus in my heart very clearly, and I didn't understand why other people couldn't hear that as well. And I was really confused why people would go to church to learn about Jesus when he was just right in their heart. I really didn't understand it. And then I would hear all these people coming out of church being so judgmental about everything, and then they were talking about sin and all of this, and I'm like, who is this Jesus that they're meeting in church? Because it doesn't sound like the guy that I know in my heart. It was really confusing for me, and the biggest thing was the judgment. Constantly, this is why I was like, I had no interest in any kind of religion, because that didn't make any sense to me as a kid.
Yes, and you know what, I'm hearing that because I've been listening to quite a few interviews, and I hear a lot of spiritual people say that as a child, that what they were being taught in church just never rang true for them. And I'm like, yeah, because, you know, children actually are closer to the divine because they still haven't been conditioned, you know, fully conditioned out of their divinity yet. So
you know what we should do? We should start a movement within the churches so that we set up a child's pulpit next to the adult, and we let the child give their version of the story, whatever it is that day, before the pastor gets up there, and then we can see what the difference is. I think we should start this movement.
That would be very interesting. Very interesting. Cause,
I know some kids that could give some really good sermons.
Yes. It's so true that I do believe that children, the younger, if you talk to them when they're very young, they can even remember some of the experience of before they came into this existence. So that it's so much evidence with that has been done with young children who remember past lives. It's so much evidence that we live more than one life. So, it's interesting that...
Isn't that the subject of, what is the book with the little boy, Heaven is for Real?
Yes.
Colton something, yeah. I mean, it's pretty, in so many cases, it's irrefutable that they remember distinctly their past lives. It's so fascinating.
Yes, it is. It's so true. And for me, like I said, it's just for me, especially now that I've started the show, I want to just follow whatever I feel Spirit is leading me in the moment. It's all about being in the now moment and embracing it. But like you said, the truth of love is unconditional forgiveness, conditional love, conditional acceptance of everyone. So that's why I say I do respect and accept everybody's belief, you know, whatever they believe. But it's more so just loving them for who they are. And I've gotten to the point where I don't try to change. I don't try to change anyone.
Yeah. I think that I can tell you, having been around so many spiritual people at the nunnery and in the communities up where the Dalai Lama lives, what people struggle with so magnificently and so deeply is self-love. And so applying these principles themselves first of whether they offer that state of pure love to themselves is really the starting point for everybody. Can you, within your own body, within your own energy field, can you offer everything inside of you a state of unconditional, equal, free, unified acceptance? Is everything within you welcome in that space? And if we hold a mirror up to that space for most people, the answer for the majority of what they feel would be no. And on my tour, I'm going to be talking about how that is keeping us in a state of separation from knowing ourselves as love, because there's a very key way that is the key to our suffering, and it is the key to healing. And so this is why it's the focus of my tour this year.
That's so true, because it does start with self-love. For me, I know that self-love, it has to start for loving myself, because really I'm all there is. I'm creating this reality from within. The outer world is just a mirror of me. So I have to first love myself so that love can be reflected back to me. If I don't love myself, there's no love to be reflected back to me, because we're all just mirrors of one another. So it has to. It all comes from within. Matter of fact, I've had 2 discussions this week with 2 different people who are spiritual and are looking for the next step, but they're asking the question outside of themselves. They want to know what their next step should be, but they're not going within. And I said to 2 different people this week that, however you go within, it doesn't have to be meditation. Some people get, inspired by running or whatever brings you to connect with your soul within and listen to that guidance, because your soul is always guiding you. We just have to quiet our mind and listen to our soul's guidance. But they were both seeking outside of themselves for solutions, and I'm saying, no, we have to get the answer we really want is within us. So I say that a lot to friends and colleagues and my listeners, that it's all about going within and following that guidance, because Spirit never is not guiding us. So tell us, Mary, more about your tour and where you're going to be this summer. And I know you're going to be in the Poconos October 1st.
I am. I'm delighted, and I just love that I'm going to be. Thank you for setting that up. I'm going to be in the Poconos on the same day. I'm going to be at a church in the afternoon and in an ashram in the evening, and I just love that.
Yes, it's going to be
so I'm going to start
wonderful.
my next week. I have a taping on Tuesday with a small documentary group, and they're doing a documentary series on mysticism and asked me to participate in that. So I'll be doing that in San Francisco on Tuesday. And then on Thursday, I'll be in Mount Shasta. Very happy to be in that very area. And I'll be speaking at the Silk Road Chai Shop. And that will kick off my tour that night. And then I'll be in Portland a couple of days after that, Portland, Oregon, and then back down in Santa Rosa for an open circle satsang in Sonoma. So that'll kick off the West Coast, and then I'm going to come back in August. I'll be with my family here. I've just been invited to, I'm in talks now to have my book turned into a movie, and so I'm working on producer on the screenplay development, and so I'll be doing that in August, and then kick off more of the tour in Michigan, and then Virginia, and New York, and probably in Maryland, and the Poconos, and New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine.
Yes. Oh, wow. Beautiful. So you really, it's a true U.S. tour, West Coast.
It is a true U.S. tour, and there's really interesting doors that are opening this year. I'm just so thrilled. So it's going to be a great time, and I'm really so excited about what I'm talking about, and I'm very happy to start getting this message out. I think it will be a topic of great discussion coming in the future about exactly what love is and our treatment of all that we think is not love. So I'm looking forward to getting that dialogue going here in the U.S.
It is so, yes. I'm so excited for you, and I'm so excited that you are coming to the Poconos. When I found out you were coming to the U.S., I was like, oh, maybe she can come to the Poconos. And you said that you have always wanted to come to the Poconos, so I'm so thankful.
Indeed, and then I'll be heading up to see Don Smallman after that, and John will be hosting me for a couple of events up there. Lovely, lovely John. So
John is amazing.
Totally thrilled. Very exciting.
Yes, it's an exciting time. I feel so much is coming. I really do feel the shift, the consciousness shift, and so much is happening. And this fall, so you're going to be in the U.S. till what, the end of October?
Yep, the end of October, and I think I have a couple of talks lining up in France and probably Germany. So I hope to have the start of my European tour then as well.
Amazing. Because I feel this year so much is happening. It's just, it's
a
wonderful.
Year of momentum, certainly. Yeah.
Yes, it is. It is so wonderful. I thank you so much for being my guest. I know that technically we've been on air an hour, but we were a little got lost about 10 minutes with me rebooting the
That's all right.
computer.
We got it. I appreciate all your work on that.
Yeah, it's just, and that's the first time that ever happened, and it's coincidental because you and I were talking about that before the start of the show. You were saying, you do all this by yourself, and I'm like, yes. I'm thinking to myself, oh, that's a piece of cake. Even when you're giving me kudos about doing this all by myself, I'm like, yeah, it's not that hard. I had to. Then I guess because I was thinking,
you got it.
That's why I was like, okay, we'll show you. So that's the first time. It was just the computer totally froze, and that was the first time. And then last week I had a guest not show, and that was the first time. But actually I think all this experience, everything, I say it all the time, and I believe it. Everything happens in perfect divine timing. So it was all so wonderful, so wonderful. So thank you so much for being with us this evening, and I will get to meet you in person 1st of October, and I'm just so honored. I'm honored and blessed. I'm thankful to you and all my guests. Thank you. So I will let you get back with your family. I know you're visiting family, and I forget, I want to say Texas right now?
Yep, I'm in right outside of Dallas, Texas.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So is it warm there? It's quite warm in the Poconos today.
It's toasty. Yes, and we had a morning. So it's nice and humid. It's got all of the flavor of Texas.
Okay. Well, we didn't used to have humidity at all. Well, I've been here 25 years, and we didn't used to have any humidity in the Poconos. But the last, I would say 10 years, now we have humidity. It's something new. I used to actually, the first 15 years I lived here, in the summertime, at night, I would have to start a fire. It would be so cold. It would just, but no more. Now we have humidity. It has come to the Poconos.
I'm looking forward to whatever your weather. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes. Well, it'll be really nice in October. The trees will be full of color. It'll be beautiful that time of the year. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I so appreciate you being and hanging on through the technical difficulties, and we were able, at least with the podcast, I'm able to edit out the 10 minutes of blank.
Good.
Yes, I can edit it out for the podcast. Okay, thank you so much. You have a great weekend with your family, and I'll see you soon. Okay, blessings. Bye-bye. Bye.